Here's a way to get a super sharp finish on a tubular knitted hem. Many people try to avoid the tubular hem because they're not crazy about how this lower edge looks. But here's how the lower edge looks using this technique. What's not to love about that? I prefer to start this cast on with the comb and weights already hung in waste yarn. You can see that there are stitches and fabric on the back bed, none yet on the front. But all front bed needles are up in working position, and very importantly, the beds are racked so that the needles alternate. Normally, we would knit the first zigzag row that passes back and forth, carrying the yarn between the two beds at the tightest stitch size we could make work, 1 or 2. To use this technique, we set it at the main stitch size. I'm going to knit the entire hem at stitch size 6, 6, 6 on the back bed and 6 on the front bed, so the zigzag row is also knitted at that number. Instead of being tight, therefore, our zigzag row is quite loose, and that's why I like to have the weights and comb already in position, pulling down as we knit the zigzag row. After checking to make sure the zigzag row did knit properly, we're ready to begin our tubular knitting. On a Superba, the arrow key that makes a little circle is a tubular setting. So I'll set both beds to do that. Almost all 2-bed setups have a tubular setting, whether they are Japanese machines with rivers or Passups or Superbas that are built with 2 beds. Passups are CX. Brothers are 1-part button on each carriage, and the Silver Reed family of machines uses the set levers. What we want is one bed to knit going one direction, the alternate bed to knit going the opposite direction. The needles had to alternate for the zigzag row, but now it's better if they oppose perfectly, so rack to the position that causes that to happen. Today I'm making a hat, and the hem will be caught inside the seam that joins the edges of the hats, and it makes little difference. But if this were the bottom of, say, a tunic sweater, I might have slits on the side and start the seam above them. Racking so that the needles oppose makes the edge of the tubular hem, which I'm showing you in the inset photo, perfectly smooth. There is no bump. So using tubular settings and the stitch size you need for the hem, knit whatever number of rows you're going to need. Then transfer all the stitches to the other bed to continue knitting in stockinette. If you're knitting a hat like this, there might be other things you would do for other projects. When the project comes off of the machine, of course, there's still waste yarn attached. When we remove the waste yarn, we have our zigzag row to work with. Normally, what people object to in the look of a zigzag row is it doesn't seem quite tight enough to make a firm crease. Here, we purposely knitted it loosely so we had yarn to work with and will make a really firm crease. Before I actually start working on the hem, take a close look at the construction of that zigzag row. It looks like a series of V's. I think of them as the zigs and the zags. What you're going to do is select either zigs or zags and chain them all together all the way across the hem. I'm going to work with the right half of the V as pictured here. You can get a good look at the V's. I'm going to go to the end away from the yarn tail, quite important, and pick up the first of those V's, the leg that leans towards me. Now we work all the way across, each time skipping the leg of the V that we've decided against working with, grabbing the next one that we are working with the latch tool, pulling it through the previous stitch, and actually we're making chain stitches out of these elongated V's. A couple of things to keep in mind: smooth yarns that are towards the middle of what the machine handles well in terms of weight are easier to do this kind of work with than fuzzy yarns for obvious reasons. It's much easier to see the V in a yarn like this. When you reach the final stitch, pull the yarn tail through that last stitch.